At number 7, I have the 2021 LA Rams. The Rams, 3 seasons earlier, had made it to the Super Bowl, but they came up short in a very close grind-out game against the New England Patriots. But coming into that season, they felt like they finally had the team that can ultimately win the Super Bowl. They traded away Jared Goff for Matt Stafford to Detroit. Also, they acquired some veterans such as Von Miller, who had already won a Super Bowl with the Broncos and was Super Bowl MVP. Also, later in the season, after Odell Beckham was cut by the Browns, the Rams got him. So, Sean McVay, as well as GM, Les Sheed, felt like this was their year to compete for a Super Bowl and to ultimately win it. The Rams started 3-0. As a matter of fact, they won 7 of their first 10 games as they went into the bye with a 7-3 record. And from there, they only lost 2 games coming out of the bye. They won their last 5 games to finish with a 12-5 record to capture the NFC West, but they ended up with the 4th seed because they lost the tiebreaker. Let me check just to be sure. Yeah, he lost the tiebreaker to the Cowboys. So they ended up with the 4th seed, won the NFC East. And of course, they definitely had a prolific offense with Stafford. They finished top 10 in almost every offensive category. They finished 9th in offense, averaging 372 yards per game. They were 5th in passing, averaging 273 passing yards per game, but they were 25th in rushing, only averaging 99 rushing yards per game. But they were 2nd in passing touchdowns, finishing with 49 passing TDs, which averaged out to 2.4 passing TDs per game. They were 25th in rushing touchdowns. They only finished with 10 rushing touchdowns, which averaged out to 1.7 rushing TDs per game. But they were 8th in points allowed, total points, averaging 27 points per game. And also, they had a pretty good defense, especially when you have a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald, as well as All-Pro corner Jalen Ramsey. Like I mentioned, you also had Von Miller on that defense. But they finished either middle of the pack, below, or high in some defensive rankings. They were 17th in defense, giving up 344 yards per game. They were 22nd in pass defense, giving up 241 passing yards per game. But they were 6th in rush defense, giving up only 103 rushing yards per game. They were 15th in points allowed, giving up 21 points per game. They finished 3rd in sacks, which they had 50 sacks, which averaged out to 2.9 sacks per game. And they were 10th in takeaways, which they created 25 takeaways. Although they were the 4th seed, this Rams team was definitely ready to do some damage in the playoffs and finally prove to the world that they can win a Super Bowl. And it started at home wild card weekend as they dominated their NFC West rival Arizona Cardinals 34-11 to advance to the divisional round. Now, they had a tall task ahead of them in the divisional round. They had to travel to Tampa Bay to take on Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were the defending Super Bowl champs at that time. And the Rams, they definitely looked like that they were going to run away with this game as they were in control pretty much of the game. But a major turnover by the Rams back in Bucs territory set up Tom Brady and that Bucs offense real good, and they cashed in with a Leonard Fournette touchdown to tie the game. And there was only about over 30 seconds left to go in the game to drive down for a game-winning field goal or to see overtime. But Matt Stafford, with nerves of steel, drove his team down the field. He hit Cooper Kupp on some pretty big bombs, including about a 60-plus yard bomb down the field that set him up to get in the field goal range. And Matt Gay knocked it through for a thrilling 30-27 win in Tampa Bay to advance to the NFC Championship game. But the Rams definitely would get some luck as they would host the NFC Championship game at home against another one of their NFC West rivals, the San Francisco 49ers, who were definitely coming off of who were definitely on a hot run in the playoffs themselves. Now the 49ers took an early lead, but the Rams defense stepped up. They forced Jimmy Garoppolo into a couple of turnovers. And in the fourth quarter, they answered with 13 points of their own to get a hard-fought 20-17 win to advance to their second Super Bowl in 3 seasons. Now, in Super Bowl 56, they would have the luxury of hosting it in SoFi Stadium in L.A., and they were taking on another hot team who was on a hot run in the playoffs in the Cincinnati Bengals. Excuse me. The Bengals. They had a dominant wild card win at home against the Raiders. Then on the road, they knocked off the number 1 Tennessee Titans in the final seconds on a field goal. Then they pulled off a huge upset by beating the number 2 Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City in overtime, thanks to a game-winning field goal. So this was the first Super Bowl in over 50 years that didn't feature a top 3 seed. Both these teams were the number 4 seeds in their respective conferences, and they were here fighting for the coveted Vince Lombardi trophy. So you knew it was going to be a battle between these two teams as they had battled all through the playoffs. And this was a back and forth game throughout as both teams traded leads. Definitely got some big turnovers on defense. Well, not turnovers, excuse me, but also definitely got some heavy pressures on both quarterbacks. And it was going to come down to the fourth quarter. Now, the Bengals, they were holding on to a 3-point lead. And all they had to do was either get a turnover, get a stop to keep the Rams at bay and finally win their first Super Bowl. But Matt Stafford, who already had a game-winning drive earlier in the playoffs in Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers in the divisional round, had to pull off some heroics again in the fourth quarter. And just like Tampa Bay, he drove down the field. Any big play he had to make, he made it. And they were definitely in the red zone. Now, he tried to hit Cooper Kupp in the end zone, but it was stopped due to a pass interference penalty that some people still debate even to this day whether it was pass interference or not. But they called pass interference. I'm trying to see who the player or who was it called on. Okay, it was called on Logan Wilson. So Wilson got hit with the holding penalty, and that gave the Rams an automatic first down. So Matt Stafford went back to Cooper Kupp again. This time, Kupp caught it in the corner of the end zone for the touchdown, and the Rams went ahead. Now, it was the Rams' turn to get a stop on the Bengals, who had just been hot all postseason long. Joe Burrow has had one of the most spectacular playoff runs any quarterback can have, and he had definitely drove his team down the field for some game-winning drives. As a matter of fact, he did it on the road in Tennessee and Kansas City to set his team up to win the game in the final seconds. And he was trying to do that again on the biggest stage, the Super Bowl. And Burrow and the Bengals offense definitely got off to a good start. They were driving down the field, and they ended up getting to midfield, and they were just short of the first down. They just needed about an inch or a yard to convert for the first down, excuse me. And Burrow throws a pass that was incomplete as Aaron Donald and Greg Gaines tackle P. Ryan for no gain. So they made a fourth down stance to seal the Super Bowl for the Rams, their first Super Bowl since '99. That was their second Super Bowl title in franchise history. Finally, they had gotten redemption for that loss. Sean McVay became the youngest coach to win a Super Bowl. Aaron Donald finally got his ring. Von Miller got his second. OBJ, Matt Stafford, they finally got theirs, as well as Cooper Kupp. So the Rams proved to everyone that they could be a Super Bowl champion, and they delivered. Cooper Kupp was named Super Bowl MVP as he had 8 receptions on 10 targets for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Matt Stafford had a pretty solid game. He finished with 26 completions on 40 attempts, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks with an 89 QBR rating. The Rams' run game didn't do much as Cam Akers only had 13 carries for 21 yards. But the Rams defense stepped up when it needed to in this game. Aaron Donald and Gaines with the goal line the fourth down stance on P. Ryan, excuse me, to seal the game. Also, the Rams Offense showed up when it needed to, especially when they were down. Plus, this Super Bowl had a few records tied. It tied for most sacks by the team as the Rams finished with 7 sacks. Also, it was the fastest second half touchdown as Burrow threw a bomb down the field to T. Higgins. Von Miller had the most sacks in his career with 4.5. And the Rams finally got a chance to win a Super Bowl since they moved to LA in front of their home crowd. Now, this team, I put them here at this ranking because this team definitely had a hell of a story in the playoffs. They dominated at home in the wild card round, but they were definitely a huge underdog against one of the greatest, if not the greatest QB of all time, and Tom Brady, going to his house after they had just came off of a Super Bowl title. They're trying to continue their title defense, hoping to repeat. Then they come back home to play another game in the NFC Championship where they had to fight hard to beat the 49ers, who were also hot. Then in the Super Bowl, again, on their home turf, had to beat the Bengals, another hot playoff team. So this team had to beat some great teams as well as some hot teams in the playoffs to get this title. They had to beat a division rival, a defending Super Bowl champ, another division rival who was having a hot playoff run, Then they had to beat the AFC champion, who was also hot, had another hot playoff run. Plus, this team was very talented. Nobody gives them props for how talented they were. Of course, you had Stafford, Kupp, but Akers was good. Also, Higbee was a solid tight end, and that defense definitely was good. Of course, you had Aaron Donald, future Hall of Famer, Jalen Ramsey, as well as Von Miller, the Super Bowl champion, but also Leonard Floyd. He wasn't no slouch. As well as Greg Gaines, but also another veteran who finally got his ring after all of his years in NFL, offensive lineman Andrew Whitworth, who played for the Bengals. Matter of fact, I want to say next year he's up for induction in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Also, Eric Weddle, the safety, he finally got his ring. So a lot of guys who were trying to get rings for so long, their dream was finally realized. Plus, now McVay is one of the greatest greatest coaches we have in the NFL, but he also needs to get some credit for the leadership he showed in this run. I mean, being the youngest, being so young at that time, he definitely showed some poise and also kept his team poised, and he know what buttons to push during this run. And this Rams season, you could definitely go, ironically I'm saying this, you can go pitch this to a Hollywood producer and it'll definitely get made.